Yeah, guys, I'm here with another Grand Archive video. This one I'm just trying to bring a new series, limited series, just for regionals and store championships. If the response is good to this, I'll look to do this again before Ascent. But essentially what I'm trying to do is grab a couple of the champions I think that are playable and people are going to be considering for the store championships and regionals. Grab a few decks for each champion and just quickly go through it, what the deck's trying to do, its strengths, weaknesses, better matchups, worse matchups. But before I do that, I just want to give a quick shout out to Luxera's map. So that's the luxerasmap.com. I'll have a link in the description below. That was created by Crown and Ver. They had their previous website gator.card.co that had all the tournament results, but it's a excellent website for anyone that wants to see tournament reports. They also have articles, but most of the lists that I'm grabbing are from these tournament reports, but you can see the stats and how the meta has changed, because it's got all the way back from the 3rd of February. So the Battle of the Archives was a marketplace one. Definitely check that one out too. So I'm starting off this series with Lorraine. I have one fire list and two win lists. The first list was actually grabbed from this Weatherlight Enterprise Road to Ascent Houston. So in this one here we had, I think it was about 40 people, and I've taken Tenru's Fire Lorraine deck. Here it is here. So he's playing Fire Lorraine. So Tenru's been playing well before me and has a bit of a natural affinity for fire. So I think this is an excellent list to show you what fire is doing in the current meta in a Lorraine build. So he's playing Lorraine Crux Knight. So this is the Lorraine that gets +1 for each Regalia weapon. And you can see most of the rest of his Regalia are swords by the GCR. So this is definitely telling us that it's a Ensoul build. So this deck uses Ensoul. But before I go to like how this deck wins and its strong cards, it's essentially also about getting floating memory and cycling. So getting to level 3 as quick as possible or as efficiently as possible. So this deck uses cards like Hasty Messenger and Creative Shock to discard cards with floating memory. Also uses cards like Cremation Ritual, which will be used to sacrifice Honorable Vanguards or Flame Rune Swordsman. It's not as much as putting these cards out on the field to attack with, but in certain circumstances you can. It's about just discarding these and sacrificing them to get them to the graveyard. Also plays Tempered Steel, which is, if you don't have the others, it's a great play to get in there. And also Idle Thoughts. This is another card, excellent turn 1 card where you can just stack the top of your deck, get floating memory just to get the wheels turning. And also Savage Slash, which is played in every Lorraine deck. It's floating memory, it's damage, it's a staple. And then also Dungeon Guide. Now he's only playing 3, and the reason is I think 4 is a bit overkill in fire decks, especially Fire Lorraine, because you have a lot of cycling with your Creative Shocks, your Hasty Messengers, and in this deck also the Idle Thoughts. You only ever want to see one Dungeon Guide, so if you're seeing multiple, you see them late, it's not the best. Now one cheeky addition here, and I think we're starting to see a lot more just because of the prevalence of wind, and then also like Rive to Spell Shield Arcane, is Varuk. So Varuk will be played and actually pairs quite nicely with Ensoul. Varuk gets played late, and then so if you've played Ensoul first and you've banished all your swords, you're not really going to materialize anymore after that. So then you can play Varuk, and now the damage is non-preventable. And because the Lorraine is Spirit of Fire, even all her attacks, so even like if you played a Savage Slash, it would actually count as fire, because Lorraine is attacking. So there's a little note, and then you've got the big fire attacks here of Rending Flames. Banish cards double the attack after an Ensoul turn, and you've got all those additional swords banished in your Lorraine due to your Lorraine's ability. that sword could be coming in. You know, you've got, let's say it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 swords after insult. Potentially you've got 7 swords in there. Yeah, you know, you can do 20 damage on a rending flames. You can do like 14 damage of a devastating blow. But they're your big attacks. Banner Knight is also to power up the Ensol. Now, Ensol, as you know, it just, once you play it, it just brings out all your swords. They attack as allies. They lose durability counter. But with Lorraine's, once they go to banishment, when you finally do swing with her, you get the additional value there. Other key cards is Ascension and Cruxite. Cruxite just so you can keep flicking in the Ascension. So Ascension, when you play it, you bounce a sword back to your material deck, or you put a sword into your material deck and you put one out. This always is paired with Sword of Avarice most of the time. And then sometimes here in the sideboard there's Prismatic Edge. But then that's brought in probably when certain matchups, if they're playing wind or fire, to get the benefit. Because if you, wind or water, if you're playing another fire deck, you don't really need this. This is always better when it's a different element to what you're playing. So this deck is can go aggro, but more of a mid-ish range deck that's built around your Ensol and your Ascension. The only reason why I'm saying it's not a full aggro deck is because you've only got 2 Rending Flames and 3 Devastating Blows. You don't have a lot of big attacks. You don't have a lot of them, and like you're playing it more safe here with the 4 Flame Sweep. So if you're versing other allied decks, you know you've got a better chance of having that in hand. And by mid-range, you know, this aggro is probably trying to win with turn 3, turn 4 at the latest. This is probably trying to win turn 5. Can kill straight away, but he's not the most aggressive fire deck. And I think that's where Fire Lorraine is at her best. You don't want to go full aggro where you're running all the Blazing Throws, that 1 cost that uses a sword and destroys the sacrifices sword for 4 damage. I think this is really a sweet spot for Fire Lorraine. You can still push and damage into Rise. So your favorable matchups, you're not super favorite into anyone, but you're not disadvantaged. So you've got okay matchups into the field. The reason being the Win Lorraines are probably favored into this, but at the Ensol package, timing a Rending Flames at the right time, Varrook definitely sways that bit back in you, so making sure you can play Varrook and then that turns off the Veiling Breeze helps. The Rise currently are probably winning by turn 4 most Rise decks, but if you need to, you can go aggro in this and try win with an early Rending Flames, but you'd really be playing around that Rending Flames and you're probably not going to try go to level 3. But when you are running 12 Crux cards, you might not have that consistency in those matchups, but definitely winnable, but not probably not favored. But yeah, so this Fire Lorraine deck, if you are looking at playing it, it's going to be a all-rounder deck. It's not going to be strong to any one particular deck, but it's not going to be a auto loss into any particular deck, which I think is why it's a solid pickup if you're not sure about what your local meta is. Now the next deck is a Wind Lorraine. This deck was by Blue Sky Candy, who went 5-0 at one of the tournaments. Blue Sky Candy is a testing partner, so I can vouch for this being a solid deck, a real annoying deck to play against. Very similar material as that Fire Lorraine deck, only difference is the Safeguard Amulet, and this is just because there's a little bit more respect here to Rise than the Fire Lorraine there. Slightly different Crux package, also going all out on Pendragons, the additional Ensoul and additional Crux, and this is really about flicking the Ascension. This deck here also has a small, I guess, human package of Phalanx Captain and Banner Knights, Swift Recruits. What this deck does well, what the Fire one doesn't, is it has Veiling Breezes, and Veiling Breezes are obviously very good. And what you're trying to do with this deck is when you get to your level 3, you just try Flicker and Bounce Spirit Blade Ascension as many times as possible to build up a big hand. So on the next turn, if someone cracks back, you've got a big Veiling to survive. And then you can also do like Ensoul. I've versed this deck many times where they have that many cards that they're going to Ensoul, but they're also going to put a Banner Knight out. So like that Ensoul is just absolutely massive. And then also, you know, they have the Phalanx Captains and put a couple of them out, Banner Knights, and they can even win with that. And you can see even in the sideboard here, there's an additional Phalanx Captain, a couple of Dispersions too, which is like a nice little bit of spice in this deck. So when you're doing the Ensouls, you can actually do like one shot with the Dispersions at the right time. The additional Phalanx Captain is probably to play into Rise. Because if they are playing to Rise, this deck is very good. Obviously with the Veilings and that, and just having one Interceptor at slowing down other Lorraine decks for a turn, when I know to pick off. But into Rise, it does struggle. Rise can, so when they are playing a Rai, they need to like push and really accelerate and try aggro. But when you are running 16 Crux cards, it makes your deck a bit more inconsistent. So this deck has a good matchup into Fire Lorraines, slightly ahead. Is decent into the aggro decks, so the very aggro Fire Lorraine, not the mid-range one I showed you before, but very aggro decks. This deck will beat them most of the times because of the Veiling. So your Xanders, your Fire aggro Xanders, and your Fire Lorraines, and I know there's a Fire Allen, but I'm not going to do any Tamer decks in this series. This deck is going to win. This deck struggles into Water Xander. Can beat it, but I feel like it's disadvantaged, and also struggles into Rai, be it Wind and Fire. I'm not saying that can't beat them. None of these decks can't beat another deck, but it's not going to win as often as the Fire Rai does, from our testing. And then the last deck, I'm actually taking this back to a deck that AK Games on the Discord was running, and it's also Win Lorraine, but it's very different in the sense that it is human tribal. So this deck, this is an old deck, and I think AK has probably added and changed some cards. So that, you know, this, if you want to play this is probably just a starting point. But what I want to highlight of this deck is not so much the material, is the actual way it plays. So if I was to a couple of changes for this deck right now, I'd add a few more Ascensions, maybe an additional Pendragon, but you can see this deck runs nearly every human. And the basis is flood the board with units and use your Phalanx Captain, use your Banner Knight, use your Inspiring Call as pumps, and win like that. It also runs the Gildas with the second wind package. So Gildas, next turn you attack with Gildas, you play second wind, restand your Gildas. Gildas is now balanced, it gets the additional +1, and there's like 10 damage there just off that. So this package here is a human package. The reason why I think this is a deck that you should consider, if you are in a meta of a lot of Rise, they current Rise are trying to win quickly, and they have cut a lot of interaction. My own Rai build I have, and then I wanted to see how it would go against one of these decks, and I had a friend where I gave him the list and we played, and I was just getting stomped. So I've had to tweak a Rai deck that I've been playing, that I've had a lot of success with, on the basis of if they're running this deck. So if you're running into a meta where you have a lot of right players, they are greedy, you can consider this one. I'd fine tune this one. Maybe just go hard, 4 Phalanx Captains, 4 Tactful Sergeants. If you maybe no Asian Protector, that's probably a bit cute, but you can probably go the additional Vanguard. You don't need to get to level 3 in this deck, so you don't have to, the additional Dungeon Guides. Very good deck. And then with the additions of, Cry for Help also helps you like redirect attacks, because you're always going to have an ally out. So it's good if you're versing a fire deck that comes with a Rending Flame. So this deck does really well, like I said, into those aggro fire matchups. Also into your just normal fire Lorraine matchups. This is a good deck. You got Veilings in the sideboard. I'll probably try find a slot for them in the main board, because they're excellent. But then this is definitely a list I would consider if I was scared of a Rye meta. It's hard to deal with. A lot of the bodies here have got 4 health. Your Phalanx Captain and your Tactful Sergeant. You've got favorable wins, so you can get a lot to 4. And then outside of some specific spells, so like your Focus Flames and Spontaneous Combustions, a lot of stuff does 3 damage, so you can get stuff out of range. There's a one board wipe in Rye, which is like Anger of the Skies, which deals 4 damage, but they have to be at Arcane. And if you're versing Ryes with this deck, you're probably going to push to try kill them with before they get to Arcane. You're not going to try get to level 3. You just push. So definitely, this is an option. Out of the 3, if I didn't know what the meta was, I'd look at Tenru's deck here. All the decks, I'll have links in the descriptions below. This deck I think is good for a meta that you're not sure of. You can try high roll into your Rise, because you do have some big damage. You've got your Varuks for the win matchups, which I think is great. And then if you feel you're in a meta with a lot of Lorraines, I'd look at this list. Into a mirror of each other, it's going to be on whoever draws the Spirit Blade Ascension, to be honest. Whoever draws it first and whoever draws the most is probably going to win those matchups, but it's a card game. And then if I was playing into a meta where I thought there was going to be a few Rise, I'd look at this list here. I'd obviously tweak it, because this list was about 6 months old, but this is an excellent starting point to make it into a list. So that's all I had for this first episode. I'll look to do another one, or the first version of this, with Rye, and then a Xander one as well. I'll try to have them all out before, maybe like a week before the store champs and regionals start. If you think there's any Lorraine list that I should have covered, let me know in the description below. If not, thanks for watching. Like it and subscribe, and reach out to me in the Discord if you've got any questions. Cheers.